We have invited representatives from all organisations who have currently or historically had dealings with Phoenix. And I take the opportunity on behalf of the staff, the volunteers and the trustees to say thank you for all your current, past and ongoing support. If I can take the opportunity as well to say that, as well as having the staff here, we do have a terrific volunteer team as well. I would also like to say a big thank you to Roger Williams, MP, and Russel George AM. They've taken our cause very seriously and added considerable weight to our arguments and in our dealings with the housing and regeneration teams at Powys County Council. So, thank you, Russel. I am delighted to say we have two guest speakers. Firstly, Mrs. Sandra Ward. Sandra is a current and indeed only ever present trustee. Sandra will give you a flavour as to where, how, and perhaps more importantly, why Phoenix came into existence. Secondly, we'll have Richard Thomas giving a talk. Richard is from an organisation called KILK. Richard will give a flavour as to how European and Welsh-driven initiatives will help to meet recycling and reuse targets, and how these in turn will enhance the well-being of people and communities of future generations.
It was a very simple beginning, really. I was a volunteer advisor in what is now Advice Mid Wales, and a couple rang up to ask where they could donate a very sound wooden bedroom suite. And I tried to find someone that would take it. A young couple came in, very short of money, expecting their first baby, and they needed a bed and a cupboard. And we joined the two together by means of my husband Peter's car and trailer, and I suppose that was Phoenix's first transaction. There was a lot of need, often from women and children who were escaping from violence, and older people from institutions trying to start again. We needed somewhere to put the furniture, and there was a lovely man called Jim Allen. Anyone from the Humpcliffe might remember Allen's Ironmongers. He offered us his huge back store, plus a great deal of help and advice over the early years. It was run entirely by volunteers from the Advice Centre, plus friends. I particularly remember a trip we took one day to Aberystwyth. A very anxious lady answered the door to receive a rather plain brown three-piece suite. It had been donated by a public house. We carried it in and she moved a couple of white plastic garden chairs out of the way. Then she offered us coffee and sat down in her new room. She suddenly started crying and said she'd never been able to ask anyone in for coffee before because she was so ashamed of how she lived. She'd been there 6 months after leaving hospital and we were her very first visitors. And I realised then how important the service was. It was such a small thing to us, relocating old furniture, but it was so important to some of the recipients. Over those early years, we were very grateful for the many volunteers who helped us, and some have been invited here today, some couldn't make it. We also stored furniture in the Caersus area, in the old coach house behind Llanwnog Vicarage. It had a cross beam at 5 foot, and I think we all forgot that at times. We heard that via Celia, who's over there, for the Newtown Volunteer Bureau, was setting up a Newtown-only service, similar to ours. And eventually we joined forces, serving the whole of Montgomeryshire. And this was when the name Phoenix rose from the ashes. At this time we started renting a unit in the Lineworks, and we had many hard-working helpers from the Newtown area. It was decided by the then committee that we would ask furniture recipients for a small donation, as people often feel better when they've made a contribution towards their furniture, more self-respect than accepting charity. In autumn 1997, we had run completely out of money. We paid the rent for the last quarter of the year on the Lineworks and tried to carry on with just about 4 volunteers. After a few successful years there, we decided to move into town to make it easier for people to come and see the furniture, and we moved in here, Pryce Jones. I believe it says something about Phoenix that the management committee / trustees include members from the very beginning and some staff. And we are very, very fortunate to have these loyal, hard-working people.
Thank you, sir. The look of today, in terms of the layout here, is terrific. And from that point of view, I'd like to thank Jane and Emma from Cafe Cymru upstairs, along with the volunteers and the staff for putting it all together. So, big thank you to them. The mantra for developing countries in Africa is trade, not aid. And that is a mantra we within Phoenix are increasingly adopting as we rely less on grants and focus more on increased collaboration, not just with the council and the housing associations, but we've also got to look to current reuse and recycling providers as well. And again, not just within Paris, but within Wales generally, and perhaps across the border as well. I think there might be one person on this stand. Okay, to a person then who has been with Phoenix for over 12 years now, started as a volunteer, then was taken on as an employee, and has since become the manager of Phoenix, during which time he has been tasked, if you like, with steadying the ship and dealing with some rather unbelievable flack at times as well. To be honest, I wasn't quite sure how to put this, but he does have my head spinning sometimes. There's no denying his passion, energy and enthusiasm and commitment to Phoenix and its aims are quite something to behold, so thank you, Richard. Now, as trustees, we'll all be happy to answer questions.